Hey, we are live. Welcome to the Confidence After Dark podcast, where the main focus of this podcast is to help couples learn to understand one another, listen to one another, and create a healthy environment for their family using the power of femininity, intimacy, and vulnerability. Because when you thrive, everyone else around you thrives. So, in today's episode, I am doing an interview with JJ Flizanes, and she is a transformation coach who works with those who are spiritual seekers, looking to remove emotional blockages and to stop sabotaging patterns and behaviors that are blocking them from achieving success in health, business, and life. And so I wanted her to come on and speak on um, emotional intelligence, how these emotional blockages can be created, and how that can affect your life and your overall relationships with other people. And so I would like JJ to start off by introducing herself, telling us about herself and her business.
Thanks, Alexia. Hi, everyone. I'm JJ Flizanes. I am the owner and creator of the Empowering Minds Network, and I've got several podcasts. My most popular one is called Spirit, Purpose, and Energy. I am a emotional coach, emotional healing coach, as well as a business coach. And a podcast coach. So I kind of wear a couple different hats, but I definitely use a lot of the same tools. It's funny that in business, I had a podcast mastermind a couple of years ago, and I stopped because the fact that in that realm, people didn't recognize the emotional blocks to their business success, right? So emotional blocks show up everywhere, especially in your business. And if you're not ready to work on those in any area of life, you're not going to get very successful in any area of life. So I do kind of a lot of different things under that umbrella of consciousness, emotions, emotional processing, emotional healing, and understanding and putting words to and structure to something that we don't have any structure to. People just think because you feel something that it's true. And
Mhm.
and if I'm upset, it must be your fault. And we really don't have any guidance or lessons. All we have is models. And if you have bad models and bad modeling, then you are going to just repeat what they taught you. You just don't, no one's ever taught this because you don't get this in school or anywhere else. So you have to search it out on your own.
Exactly. That is very, very true. Um, and so, how are emotional blockages created? Or, based on what you've seen doing this for quite a while, what patterns have you seen that, cause people to create or end up having these emotional blockages?
Well, let's define what that means so people maybe can get a better sense of what an emotional blockage is. Because for the people that have them, they don't even know they have them. They don't know they have them until they have a disease or they have a problem that keeps repeating itself over and over again, whether it's a relationship problem and it's the same argument over and over again, or it's the same kind of person you keep attracting. And so, whether you have breakups or multiple divorces, you just keep repeating the patterns in your body. You keep getting sick and hurt, or you keep getting a cold, or you keep attracting circumstances that and situations that have a pattern to them. So an emotional blockage would be, well, let's back up another step. So in Chinese medicine, each one of your organs represents an emotional center. So your heart is where there's love and joy. Your lungs are what hold grief. Your liver is anger. Your spleen is worry. Your kidneys is fear. And so when you look at the different organs in the body and how Chinese medicine looks at that energy, we we cycle through emotional energy all day long every day. What becomes a problem is when you have more of, and it's not cycling, it's not being released, it's not being processed. A lot of times clients in my past would get, I'm a retired personal trainer, and many of my clients, like especially the men, would get bronchitis after their mother passed away. And I would never be surprised because, again, the lungs are how we process grief. So if there's an overload of grief and we haven't processed it, then it's going to cause an emotional block in our body, an energetic block, which is going to manifest as a physical symptom. To make another connection, let me ask you, Alexia, when you're embarrassed, what happens to you? How do you feel in your body?
I feel hot. I get flushed. Um, my heart starts racing,
Yep.
maybe a little hard to breathe.
Mm-hmm. How about when you have fear?
When I have
Worry?
fear, I shake a little bit. Um, my voice can quiver, and I could just kind of want to freeze.
Mm-hmm. You get stiff, maybe a little bit in places, tight. Right.
Yeah.
These are physical manifestations of an emotion. So when we're not cycling through our emotions and allowing them to be processed, and we're not processing them, letting that energy go, then we get a buildup. It's like not going to the bathroom for 5 days, right? Like you eat food, it has to come out. You have to poop.
Yeah.
All right. If you eat fried food for that 5 days, you don't poop, you have a problem. And we all understand that, right? So if you have negative emotion and you haven't cried or screamed or let it out or process it, then you've got stuck toxic negative emotion in your body somewhere. And that causes all kinds of problems. It's the reason why people have anxiety. It's the reason why people have depression. It's the reason why people, have chronic worry and chronic pain and chronic fatigue. And I mean, geez, the list goes on and on for all the body ailments that one has. And how you can tell, a very easy way to tell is to look at what addictions people have. And so when I say addictions, just keep in mind, everyone has an addiction. Every person has at least one. Most of us have multiple addictions. And an addiction is just a repression of emotional energy. So you think about, what do I do to ease my emotions? And for some people, it's have a drink, smoke some weed, take some pills, watch television, go shopping, eat, be on my device, make sure that I'm always stimulated. So these are ways. Control is probably the biggest addiction we all have, the idea of control and trying to control circumstances so that we feel better. But you can always see smoking, any tobacco use. These are all addictions, and they numb us and push down what wants to come up. So emotional blockages are everywhere. You don't have to look too hard to see where somebody has one. There's even actually, on the other note, like I'm thinking of my partner and some of my clients, there's even like over positivity addiction where they can't sit in their body. Like they high vibe it out. They high vibe it out, and something comes in, they don't allow it, and they want to mask it by going in the opposite direction and pivoting, which has value, but it doesn't honor the fact that it came in as a hurt, a feeling, and it has information. And if we don't examine its information and we deny it and ignore it, then we still have a buildup, even though you can get yourself to compartmentalize, so to speak. But my partner had an anxiety attack for the very first time, like a debilitating one, back in 2015. We weren't together then. We were both in other marriages, but he didn't know what it was. And he had no concept of the level of anxiety that he lived with all the time until his body literally shut down and he froze and didn't know what to do and had this overwhelming sense of despair and sadness. And he just had no idea what was going on. And when he went to the doctor, they said, "We think you have a panic attack." And that wasn't even his realm because he's an over positivity person. He just, oh no, he wants to, and he is a very positive person, but he wasn't allowing in anything negative. He batted away like a fly. And again, we don't want to sit in it, but we want to acknowledge it and allow it, because our emotions, like a pendulum, swing in both directions. And again, when we look at your organ system, you're structured to experience these emotions. It's part of being human. And if you don't, but the amount and how painful is it? And do you stick with it? Do you stay with the story? Those are all questions that you have power of changing. But generally, we cycle through like air. We breathe in, we breathe out. Again, we eat food, we poop. We have an emotion, we have a thought, it creates an emotion. And if it gets stuck, it causes a block.
Oh wow, that was a very thorough explanation, and I loved it. I could definitely relate to a lot of what you were saying. I was processing it, being able to pick out examples of my own life where I was repressing certain emotions and it was manifesting physically. I would say definitely the depression. I believe I had an anxiety or a panic attack when I was pregnant with my first child because I was just so emotional and I just didn't know what to do. Like I didn't know what to do with all these new hormones and emotions going on. And it was just a lot going through my mind. And so I can definitely see how when you have those emotional blockages or that you're repressing it or trying to ignore it and trying to remain overly positive, or even when you're being stuck, with the feeling instead of um going through that cycle, it seems like, then it manifests and it has negative outcomes for you.
It can.
That's
Oh,
correct.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Yeah.
body will tell you. Your body is where your intuition lives. 78% of your subconscious lives in your body. So your body will tell you. But most people override their body. They don't pay attention to their digestion. They don't pay attention to, again, that sensation of energy that's we call anxiety. They don't pay attention to the back pain, the neck pain, the stomach pain, the shoulder pain, the tightness in my, in different parts of my body, the knee pain. We don't look at that. We just think it's something physical that has nothing to do with the emotions, and it has everything to do with both of it. So, and then it gets bigger and bigger. I used to joke. I used to in my training would speak to different groups, and I remember speaking to a lot of men in like Southern California, Edison. It was actually up in Northern California, but and I have all these guys, and it's just me, doing my little dance, trying to get them to be healthy and like think about stuff. And it wasn't really emotionally based, but they'd all make jokes about and I said, you know why men die first? Oh, our wives kill us. Ha ha ha. I was like, no, because you're single focused as a man, which means you're like trying to hunt the deer, which means you're not distracted by, you're not listening to or paying attention to all the little signs that lead up to the heart attack that might have told you a heart attack was coming. But because you're so focused forward and sometimes out of your body, you have the heart attack, which could have been prevented if you would have listened to all the signs that your body gave you before that. Right. And that's about men
Yeah.
being single focused and women being diffused awareness. And we kind of juggle multitasking on different levels at the same time. But if we all could tune into our body will tell you when something's out of balance and when something's off. And it's a little bit of it's like your body inside tapping and knocking on the door saying, hey, something for you to address. Hey there. And then if you just, take some Tylenol or drugs or numb it or drink it away or forget it's there or overcompensate for it, it just gets bigger and it gets bigger and it gets bigger until it takes you down. So you're going to listen at some point. You may be dead, but you'll be listening because you'll be non-physical and be like, man, I wish I would have listened to that.
Right. I'm glad you brought that up because I was thinking that, like, when you were talking about listening to your intuition and being in tune with that and allowing that to drive, what you need to pay attention to, that made me immediately think like feminine energy. So, I'm glad that you brought that up, that women do tend to be more emotionally in tune, emotionally focused, um, and listen to their bodies more and know when something is wrong and take action on it versus men, brushing it off, or it's not that big of a deal, or they'll just deal with it later, and stuff like that. That's something I have to get on my husband about all the time because I'm like, why won't you just go get this checked out? Oh, they're not going to tell me anything different. I already know what's going on, or it's not that serious. But to me, I'm like, there's something deeper going on here. We need to figure this out. I can't give you, all the answers, even though I have a little bit of a medical background. I can't give you all the answers. I'm not a doctor, so I'm glad that you brought that up. And I wanted to ask you, going into that, why is emotional intelligence important? But I guess first, could you explain what you feel like emotional intelligence is and why that's important to have?
Sure. I'm going to start with emotional intelligence is, for me, there's a component of consciousness. There's a component of responsibility. Emotions aren't like, it's not like smoke in the air that you breathe in and it happens to pass by you. Emotions are created because you are either looking at something, or you're thinking about something, or you're remembering something. And it could be subconscious also. It happens so fast. It could be a subconscious memory, or it could be a conscious memory, and you have an interpretation about it. And that interpretation is what creates the emotion, because people can have multiple interpretations of different things. I mean, some people, I mean, heck, just look at politics. I mean, that's one area that you got people mad about one thing who aren't mad about one thing. It's like some people think, how can you be mad about this? Well, because they think about it differently. They interpret it different. So emotional intelligence for me would be someone who understands that concept, that not everybody sees things the same way. Not everyone interprets the same things the same way. It doesn't mean the same thing to you. And so understanding the level and the layers of that, and then also understanding what your feelings are. Can you identify your feelings when you have that knot in your stomach? Do you understand that that's possibly worry? Do you feel and can acknowledge and can identify your own feelings? That would be another part of emotional intelligence. And then I think the last part for me would be whether you have tools or not, because some people are very good. Everyone's in therapy. Everyone's really good about identifying their emotions. They don't know what to do about it, but except keep acknowledging how they feel. How do you feel? I feel bad, like for 20 years. Okay, how about let's do something about it? Maybe, I don't know. Let's maybe change the interpretation. Let's find a solution to heal the wound that this is tickling. But so for me, emotional intelligence has a bit of responsibility of knowing that no one else can feel your feelings for you, and no one gave you that feeling, and no one can hurt you. No one can hurt you. If the trigger lives in you, the wound is in you. So Alexia, if I was to say to you, I don't know you. Alexia, you're not very driven, or, you're kind of boring. You really don't have a personality. Like, would that offend you? I'm looking at your face and you haven't budged, because you would be like, girl, you don't even know me. Like, of course I do. Right. Because if it's not true, and and what I'm saying is untrue, and it's untrue, you're not even going to flinch. You're going to be like, okay. But when I say something that you fear might be true, or that you might agree with, and it hits a wound inside of you, that's when you get triggered and have hurt feelings or a negative emotion. So understanding that triggers live in you, and that when you're triggered, it is not the other person's fault, literally, because what they're saying, even if it's about you, trust me, it is not about you. So because people can get their feelings butt hurt with things that have nothing to do with them. Like the person over there can be doing something, and all of a sudden their feelings are hurt. It's like, how'd that happen? Well, they hurt my feelings. But they weren't even paying attention to you. They didn't even consider you. How did you go get your feelings hurt? Right? It has nothing to do with them. It never does. This emotional intelligence is inner work. It's inside work. It's us. It's what we have to focus on. No one else. And that's the difference between, I guess, the work I do and, when you go to a therapist. And I'm not, I know that there are therapists. I've had one who has had different tools and has had a bigger impact in the past. But generally, the structure of traditional talk therapy is that you get validated for your negative feelings. And so you stay in your story, and there's not really a way out, because you just keep coming in to get validated about how you feel bad about something, or how you're frustrated, and that person wronged you, and that person wronged you, and how come this happened? It's a story that keeps you stuck. And so it's not empowering. It's not empowering. When I do the opposite, I do how is it your fault? How is it your fault? How did you attract this? How did you manifest this? What is it in your interpretation of this that feels bad for you that only you control? Because then we have something to do about it. Then we can change it. You only have power when you take responsibility for it. And I'm not saying that to be shameful or blame anybody or have them think that they're, because again, for this is going to land very differently for many of you. Some of you are going to get this straight away and you're going to be like, totally cool. I get it. And the other half are going to be thinking, what are you talking about? I did not create this situation. I did not ask for this bad thing to happen to me. I'm going to say, well, you didn't ask for it. But when you're in alignment with whatever it means to you, we see things. It's like we have different colored glasses on. If I was to, lay out 6 different color sunglasses right now, and I put my red ones on and I'm looking at something, and you and I had a discussion about color, what color something was. I said it was pink. He's like, no, it's white. No, it's pink. No, it's white. We go back and forth, but I'm looking from this lens, and we all have a lens that's called our experience, our past life, our upbringing, our parents, our childhood, our all of that is in the lens that you look out of, and everyone's lens is a different color, right? So we can't have this black and white conversation about right or wrong or blame or whatever. All we can do is say, well, why does it look this way to me? Is there anything I can do about the way that it looks to me? So to me, I know that's a really long answer, but emotional intelligence to me is something more, it has more depth than simply I am aware of my emotions or I can identify my emotions. I think I would never say to somebody, you're emotionally intelligent if they didn't hit those marks.
Being able to find the tools and figure out the why and the root behind it. Like, why is this triggering you? Um, why do you feel this way? Why do you have this perspective? And then, is there anything you can do about it to change it, or can you even change it? Is it just the way that you view things? Because we all view things differently. And it was interesting that you spoke on talk therapy. So you feel like talk therapy is being stuck in a story and you just repeating the same maybe negative story, from your past, and it keeps coming up, and it's like it's keeping you stuck.
From my experience only, from people that I have who've been in my life, who I've seen going through therapy, or not necessarily me, but I have clients that will listen to my show. They'll find my show. I had one person go to a therapist, find my show, stop going to a therapist. All people come work with me after they've been in therapy 5-7 years. They do 2 sessions with me and they're like, oh my God, like, and whatever, like we flipped the script. They feel a million times better than they ever did in therapy. And it has happened enough that it caused me, and it's caused me to create I did a talk. It's actually on my website. It's free. Anybody can go download it or access it. It's called 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. Because I can always tell who, like, I have a client right now. She's been in therapy 20 years, and she came to my live event last year and has risen to a new level that she's never been to before. And then in one session, we got rid of, like, we did some tapping and we got rid of a trigger that would cause her to be in tears instantly every time for 20 years. And it's gone now. And so again, some of the tools, now I'm not saying there are therapists that use tapping, there are therapists that use hypnotherapy, there are therapists that use different tools. Traditional talk therapy is when you come in and the therapist says to you, how does that make you feel? And you literally, they're just reflecting back to you everything that you're saying. You are the center of attention. You are the victim. Yeah. And that is what I feel does not serve people, because it has, for many reasons. And again, the talk is free. People can go get it. It's 3 Reasons Why Talk Therapy is Ineffective. It's at my website. And I do a whole 90-minute presentation on the 3 reasons that I believe traditional talk therapy is ineffective. Now, that saying, I have seen several therapists over my lifetime. The last one was the best one, but even there were limitations there. I went in knowing exactly what I wanted, and literally I hired her and set the tone. I walked in as a leader and said, here's what we're going to do. Can you do this for me? And she said, yes. Now, the one before her, I walked in and said, I'd like to do EMDR. Because at the time I didn't realize EMDR was basically EFT not with somebody else. And so now I have EFT. So now I don't need EMDR. I didn't know that at the time, but I walked in saying, I want EMDR. And every session, at the end of the session, when we didn't do it, I would say, can we please do EMDR next time? And I would write her an email every time. And she'd say, okay. 6 sessions later, we finally did EMDR, or maybe the 5th session. And then again, on the 6th session, we didn't do it. And I'm so frustrated. And I said to her, why can't I, this is why I'm coming to you. And she said, well, but when you come in, you tell me about what's going on in your relationship. I said, because you ask me how I'm doing. I answer the question. And then you keep asking more questions, and I keep answering the questions. But generally, this is your room. You're supposed to be the expert. I'm not going to come in and tell you how to therapy me. Although I could have, and I ended up giving her a CD of Law of Attraction. I think our contract was I was supposed to meet her, be frustrated, and give her my Law of Attraction information, because then she would email me and say, this is amazing. I was like, okay, clearly you needed me more than I needed you in this situation. Then you were the contrast to get me to go to the next person. So I didn't walk in that room without knowing that I was going to get what I wanted. And so I researched somebody and like clearly had all of it laid out very clear. Like, this is what I want to do. Can you help me with this? And they were like, yes. And we the first session we did EMDR. I was like, thank you. Yeah. That's what I want. So again, I know people who have had had good relationships with their therapists and think it works. But I also have worked with therapists. I've had so many therapist clients and they get stuck in their stories. They get stuck in the why, like why they can't do something and the and all the details. I'm like, oh my God, it's too many words. Shut up. You're just afraid. So they frustrate me working with therapists. Holy shit. Because they're so educated. They're so smart about all the reasons why they can't do this or this and this and this and this and this. And it's so convoluted. I'm like, can we get to the chase? Got to the chase here. So again, I know it sounds like I'm totally dissing all therapists, and I'm just acknowledging that I'm sure there are wonderful, amazing. I have them on my show. The ones who are doing groundbreaking work come on my show. The ones who I'm like, yes, we talk the same language. We're about making things happen quickly. We don't have to wait 5 years, 2 years, 6 months to make change. Mm-hmm. And the other thing I don't love about therapy is that, because I experience this myself in couples therapy, because there's no structure and you got two resistant people trying to talk to each other with no structure, by the time we're at the 30 to 40 minute mark, now we're getting somewhere. Now people are comfortable. They're opening up. We're hitting a wound, but we're at 45 minutes and the session ends in 5 minutes. And now you leave feeling crappy. You feel worse leaving than you came in. Right. That should never happen. Nobody leaves a session with me or my trainers feeling worse than they did. Everybody feels better. That is why I like coaching over therapy, because there's structure and we can go through the process and there's homework and there's a path. I created a course called the Roadmap to Emotional Healing because it needs a path. It's not going to be the same path for everybody, but you need to know where you're going. What exercises do I need? If I have these core wounds, what should I be doing to help heal them? And where do I start? What's going to make the biggest impact the fastest? I have do group coaching, and this group I'm in right now, it's a 3-month sort of beta to test if 3 months is enough time. And I don't think it is, even though they're all getting great results and they all feel great. And if we're making life changes, I'm like, 3 months is still not enough. But the one guy that's in it, in one conversation, I erased and replaced 35, 40 years of pain and sadness with happiness, love, and true appreciation for his father in one conversation, because we changed the story. And I've yet to hear anybody that goes to therapy and comes out with a whole different story. I think that the story is because nobody challenges your story. They just listen to you complain or emote. And if they do challenge your story, it's over a long period of time. When they say, do you this? And it's like, and you have to find it on your own. And it's like, people, they don't have the tools to find it on their own. This is where they are because this is what they know. If you have to educate them about other ways to look at things, other ways to think about things, that's why they're coming to you. So I'm not a fan of the structure, obviously, because I just think it takes too long. People don't like it. Men hate it because they don't want to go talk to somebody with no structure. They don't want to just go sit and like, what did you do? And then they talk about what happened yesterday. Well, who cares what happened yesterday? It's attached to your core wound. Can we just go to the core wounds and be done with it? Why do we have to like go through every little hurt that you had all day long? Because it doesn't get to the root. So in my therapy experience, I did come across, because I'm all about structure, I came across an exercise that I incorporate in all my work, which is to how to uncover your core wounds. It's like, would you go to the doctor and the doctor tests you? I'm not a fan of most doctors either, but regardless, it's the idea. It's the idea that you all can get behind, that if you're going to the doctor, you're going to the doctor to evaluate and test you so they can diagnose you, so they know how to treat you. Well, that is what I do with emotions. First, we have to diagnose you, which is find the core wound. So I know so you know how to be treated. You know what to do next. But if we take 10 years to talk about core wounds and the story hasn't changed, see, to me, healing is when you're different in the same situation. And I have seen too many therapist clients of mine, therapist friends of mine, who tell their people to adjust their behavior. Oh, these people upset you. Well, don't hang around those people. Now, I'm not saying you don't want to get rid of people eventually when you outgrow them, but that isn't healing. That's avoiding. If I'm in a situation that triggers me, the best way to know if I'm growing is to keep going in that situation and see how I feel, is to work on why it triggers me and then test myself when I can be different. in the same situation, I am on the healing path. Otherwise, it's just avoidance. You quit your job, you leave your marriage, you move out of your house, you're just avoiding. That's not healing because you take you with you. So you're just going to repeat it again.
Exactly. Oh, that was that part. That last part. You don't know you're healed until you go back into the situation and you respond differently. I can definitely relate to that because I would going back to when you were talking about triggers. That was a big thing for me. I was in therapy 3 years. And during the 3 years I had two therapists. The last one I liked her the best. And I just graduated from therapy back in July of this year. And, it was because she was moving on to something else, but she also felt like I was at a different point from when I first started. But a big thing, between me and my husband, he has some of the same views as you towards therapy. Like you're just going in, you're talking about the same things, and you're coming back upset. You're taking it out on me. Like I can feel the energy. You feel even more depressed. Like, and I couldn't see it. I was like, no, it's just because things are coming up and it's things that's been bothering me for a while, so I'm talking it out, and now I see that I didn't have the time because it's such a short session and it was mostly just talk. I didn't have the time to get to the tools to what do I do with that, like when we're talking about something from childhood that hurt me or talking about my triggers, what can I take from this session to come out with with a better attitude, a better outlook, so that I'm not taking it out on my family or my partner. So that definitely stuck out for me because I could see how because I do like therapy, that it gives you the space to be able to talk about, things that's bothering you and to reflect on things, especially from your childhood and stuff like that. But what I don't like is that, like you said, it can get long-winded and it could take a while for you to get to the point where you're actually taking actionable steps and you're coming out with realistic, like real life tools that you can use like right now in order to start making a change in your life. That's the one thing I don't like about therapy. And that's kind of why I became a coach as well, because I want to equip moms with tools that they can use right now because we're limited on time. We don't have a lot of time. We're doing so many different things. We need something that's gonna work like as soon as possible, to get us from A to B and to start bringing in that balance in our life so that we can start moving on and getting to that point where we're healed. And when you said that you don't really know when you're healed until you're faced with that situation again and you're able to respond differently. Once I stopped going to therapy, I was afraid at first, but I knew that it was time for me to start taking action versus just repeating a story. And I feel like that allowed me to start putting things into practice and to start putting tools into practice. And that's when I seen the difference. And seeing the difference gave me more confidence. Like, okay, something did work. I am healing. The same thing that was triggering me just 6 months ago isn't triggering me anymore in my relationship with my children, how I respond to them, how I respond to stressful situations and stuff like that. So I just thought that was powerful right there. You may have felt like it was long-winded, but I felt like it was much needed for people to hear that part. That when you are confronted, that it's not about taking, I guess, the trigger away, but just when you're faced with that or even new challenges, how are you responding to that? Not trying to ignore the emotion or stuff it away, but processing it and taking that and being able to use it as a tool and as a power piece versus letting it cripple you and keep you stuck. So I really like that.
Thanks. That was very well said. Yes. I have had people write in who tell me my show has changed their life because I give tools on the show for free. And I've never met them. They've never worked for me. They worked with me. They've never paid me. They've never seen me. Right. So I aim like you to give people tools. There comes a point in which, there's only so much that we for ourselves can apply until we can't see what we can't see. Right. But there are plenty of tools that can be used that people can get for free. They can do themselves and, get a lot of progress. And then when you get stuck, that's when you bring in somebody else who can see something you can't see. But otherwise, if you're willing to do the work, there's a ton of stuff to do.
Exactly. It's just about finding the right tools for you. Because like you said, there's so many out there and there's so many, people with different advice, different tools, different things that you should do. But it's good to experiment and just find what works for you. And that's part of the journey, getting to know yourself, having that self-awareness so that you know what you need, and you know what is going to be a time waster. You don't want to keep wasting your time, because time is something that you can't get back. You can always learn, you can always grow, you can always get better, get wiser, and things like that. But you can't get back the time that you may have wasted being stuck in the same position because you didn't want to, get outside of your comfort zone and experiment.
Right.
So, um, so then I wanted to ask you, what ways can we learn to control our emotions? Um, I know we spoke on, that you shouldn't push them away, that you should allow yourself to process them. But let's say that um when you feel an emotion like such as anger, and instead of, you know, processing it, you immediately go to reaction mode. How can you like put a divide right there to be able to control your emotions without reacting or um overreacting too much?
Well, when it comes to anger, here's the question to ask yourself, because anger is a lid on the pot. Anger is the lid on the boiling pot that a lot of people like to stop at. So I think I have an emotional scale here. This is the emotional scale from Abraham, and anger, there's 22 lines, and anger is 17. So anger is anger is like the lid on the boiling pot. It's actually not the emotion that you want to uncover. What's really under anger is fear and sadness. So when you ask yourself, because we go to anger because anger feels good. So someone who, and for someone that's like on line 22, which is fear, grief, depression, despair, powerlessness. If someone's feeling powerless, that's what depression is. It's powerlessness. Yeah. Going from powerless to anger is great because it's where you take your power back. Anger means I'm taking my power back. Okay. You don't want to stay there though. You want to kind of keep going up the emotional scale so you can get to joy and appreciation and freedom and love and passion. So when someone's angry, in that moment, you're not going to analyze what's going on. You're not going to stop the anger, but having healthy anger is important for expression and to release it. Because if you stuff it, you're going to have back pain, liver disease, cancer. Okay. We don't want any of that. So I would recommend having a few options of an outlet. I'm a big one to take people through, like, where you can, if you want to be physical, being physical is always really good. Like if you have a not a real baseball bat, but if you have a child and you have a plastic baseball bat, that would be good. Or even a pillow. I had somebody the other day take a pillow and slam it against a chair. Okay. And using words. I remember once in a conference where I was volunteering, it was so inconvenient. An ex-boyfriend was like ignoring me or something. And I got so angry and I grabbed my friend and I said, come with me. And we went to the bathroom and there was a little like couch kind of chair in the bathroom, like a love seat. I picked up the pad that you sit on and I said, hold this. I'm going to kick it and I'm going to punch it. So I do kickboxing. So I think I did 3 roundhouse kicks. And each time I did it, I let out a sound. I was like, ah. And then after the third one, I broke into tears. Okay. So if you ever know that what's underneath your anger is fear or sadness, it's wanting to come out, and anger is you trying to hold that pot down on that lid on that boiling pot of water to kind of control it. Anger is trying to control the sadness or the fear. You do need to allow it to come out of you. And maybe you can't physically do something in that time, but maybe you can shadow box. Let's say you're at work. Somebody pisses you off. Go to the bathroom, shut the door, and shadow box. Don't hit anything, but punch the air. If you can allow sound out, it will really help move that energy out of you. So that way you can get into what's really you're really afraid of or what you're sad about. Once you get there, the emotions calm down, and then you release it. And even just that releasing, I mean, I felt so much better after that. I cried, but I was in there 5 minutes. I was like, ah, 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 ah. And then I got up, I was fine. I was like, okay, cool, I feel better now. I took an emotional poop. Like I just had to go to the bathroom literally to take this out of me. So if anger is your thing, depending on the amount of it, you do need to have a healthy outlet. And again, pillows, breaking something nobody cares about, not hitting anybody, but yelling, like screaming is great. That's why they have those axe throwing places now, which is great. People think, oh my God, that's so dangerous. No, people need that shit. People need to be throwing stuff in a safe environment where they're allowed to release their anger. And that's the problem, is that most people don't feel like they can release their anger because it's unsafe for people. People are afraid of it. I did a podcast episode recently called something about holding the space. Do you know how to hold the space? Most people don't know how to hold the space for somebody else because that anger triggers the person who's near you, and then they don't want you to be angry because it scares them. So they go, no, be quiet, be quiet, like don't be angry. And now we get into repression, and nobody ever feels like they can be fully self-expressed because their emotions trigger other people's emotions, and so everyone's trying to control everybody's emotions because they don't want to feel bad. So I want to change the word control to allow and release. You asked me, how can we control? I don't want you to control. I want you to process, allow, and release. Because if we're trying to control it, control is part of the addiction and then it gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And all of a sudden you're furious about some stupid thing that happened 2 weeks ago that you haven't let out, and someone's yelling about something and it was the dumbest thing ever. But if we would have let it out then, after the energy of a trigger happens and you allow yourself to have the emotion, you can go into, because you can't analyze when you're in fight or flight. When you're in that reactivity part, you're not going to don't go in your head because it's another way to stuff it. But I do have another list. It's called the feelings and needs list. And I have actually a little course that goes with it and stuff. Anyways, the feelings and needs list is free. You can go to jjflizanes.com/feelings list and download it for free. And I'll show it to you. But it's a 3-step process. So talking about tools. This is a tool that I start every group program with when we deal with emotions, because while it's going to sound simple, you're going to be like, oh, that's cute. 3 steps, 1, 2, 3. It is the hardest thing because we do not think like this. We have been trained to look at people and situations as a blame situation. I wasn't angry. You said that. Now I'm angry. Must be your fault. All right. Or even to look at the situation of why. Here, I'll give you one. It just keeps coming to my mind. It's like when couples fight over little things, like you didn't put the toothpaste cap back on the toothpaste, or you didn't wipe up the crumbs. And you look at, well, why does anyone care about that? Like, what's really underneath that? And I'll use that as an example, but the list looks like this for anyone that's listening and not watching. Again, you go to jjflizanes.com/feelings list to get a free copy. But so step 1 is to identify what you're feeling when you have an emotion. Right. And again, you're not going to do this when you're happy. You're only going to do this when you're upset. So it's going to be only when you have a negative emotion, because what a negative emotion means is that you have a need that's not being met, or the perception of a need not being met. It may not be true. It just may be in your mind that you have a need not being met. All right. But there's 100 different feeling words on this list. So when we talk about anger, a past relationship of mine did not think that he had anger until he punched the hole in the wall. And I said, he's like, okay, now I'm angry. I said, no, that's rage. So there's a difference, right? So when we look at, there's a difference between irritated, miffed, and rage. Yes. Okay. So when we can fine tune what the intensity of the emotion is, more specifically, we have a story that goes with it, and we can better understand where it comes from and what to do about it. So step 1, identify the feeling. Step 2, once you understand what the feeling is. So in the case of irritability because my husband doesn't put the cap back on the toothpaste or doesn't close the drawer or leaves crumbs on the table. Okay, let's use that example. Then we go to what need is not being met. So now most people are going to say, well, because he didn't follow directions, because he didn't he didn't do the right thing. Okay, that's not it at all. Okay, you're going to have a lot of people that aren't doing whatever the right thing is. Right. So you look at what the need is. So what do you think the need would be? Someone might say control. Well, control is not a need. What the need for a lot of people is most likely, and I'll read some of these to you. So there's a couple different categories. There's meaning, autonomy, authenticity, connection. So first of all, and let me just define that need doesn't mean needy. This is not because you're weak or dependent or not good enough or not smart enough. We all have 86 basic human needs. All right. Yeah. Air, hydration, movement, procreation, rest, safety, shelter, sustenance, touch, play, humor, joy, laughter. These are some of our needs. So if I'm all controlling about, crumbs not being cleaned up or the toothpaste, I'm thinking someone might say, well, they want to be more considerate. Well, okay, is my need for consideration? Maybe. But it also may be that I'm not considering myself, because it's always going to be that whatever you think you're not getting, you need to give to yourself. But what is it really? Is it the idea of safety or the idea of security or the idea of trust? Does it tickle a wound of trust? Maybe you don't trust your partner and you think these little things, or if they can't prove to me that they can do these little things, that can I really trust them in life in other bigger ways? Could it be safety? Like, do you have a safety issue? I had a client once who, in the company that she worked for, would get the project last, but if there were mistakes, she would feel nervous and have anxiety about telling them to fix it because she was in charge of delivering it. And she thought, well, if it's not delivered on time or if it's wrong, it's going to look like it's my fault. I said, okay, so what do you need? She goes, I need control. I said, you can't control anything. Put that aside. So I said, what happens if it gets put to the client or they complain about it? Like, what bad could happen from that? We have to work backwards. And I said, do you think maybe you'd get fired? Yes. Okay. What happens if you get fired? You don't have any money, right? Correct. I said, so do you think that it's really a need for safety and security? So when we looked at, I said, all right, let me give you a different scenario. You now have $50,000 in your checking account. Do you care if you get fired? She said, oh. So now we turned it. So her need was for safety and security financially. So she's focused now on paying down her debt and saving money so she'd never feel unsafe again in a work situation. So do you see how, but we want to say, oh, it's that person. I need them to care about what happens to me. We make up these different stories. So again, that's something, it's simple, but it isn't easy. So feeling first, need second, third, what are the strategies, more than one, always more than one, that I can take to get my need met that does not require anyone else to be different. So hers was to pay down debt, get a savings of some money, and probably just in work related things, double check her work, whatever, talk to her supervisors. I mean, there were multiple strategies that would ease the anxiety of being fired or blamed for someone else's mistake and therefore not having any money to pay her bills. So there are multiple strategies that she took, and all of a sudden, so it's never been a problem again. So that's what I'm saying. This is a tool that if you master this, most of your life will be great. Like, you don't have to do anything else. Like, if you can really, really get this, you can make a lot of movement and strides in your life. I have a ton of tools, but like my toolbox is gigantic. But I'm saying literally, this is the first, easiest, and in the moment when you're upset, anytime. I tell people, put it in your car, place it to your mirror, put it in the kitchen, put it everywhere you are, have it at your desk. So if you get upset, you can go, okay, what am I feeling? What need is not being met? Because then when you get empowered to get your own need met, you realize that you give your power away too often to other people and you expect them to make you feel, do this for you. And they're not going to, it's not their job. And when you take that power back, and it just gives you this, not only confidence, but a sense of security and safety that you're the one going to do it. You just have to identify what it is. Now, it doesn't mean you can't ask people to contribute. Like, okay, in the case of intimacy, yes, if you have a partner and you want more intimacy, but you really can't make it just about them. So whether it be toys or self-pleasure or, finding other ways, or or non-sexual intimacy, having intimacy on a different level. You find other ways to get that, but you can't turn to your partner and demand they change so that you feel better. It's never going to work.
Right. Right. That is so true. I just did like a little video, they call it Reels on Instagram. And um that is something I spoke on, like, is your happiness dependent on somebody else? Because I agree with you that, and I had to come to that realization too, that my happiness isn't dependent on somebody else. They can't, like you said, fulfill that need for me. I have to figure out ways to get my needs met, to make myself happy without them. And then I feel like that removes like a barrier, that removes like a film, so that you can see, you know, what it is that you really need from that other person. Um I did have a question though. Is support um the second, like an example of the second step, like you
Your need for support.
your need for support, is that an example?
Yep.
Okay, because that's immediately what I thought of when you said like he doesn't wipe up the crumbs. That made me think of like support, like I'm doing it all the time, or I feel like I'm doing it all the time, and you're not. And so that makes me feel like you're not supporting me. And I just was wondering, like, is that a need that's not being met? Like the need for support and help, like around the house with things because you're feeling overwhelmed. And I'm all about figuring out ways to lessen that because I work with overwhelmed moms. So I like to figure out ways to reduce that overwhelm. So what are some things that I can do to do that? Like, do I need to adjust my routine? Do I need to incorporate more help? Do I need to um change like my priorities and just different things like that? I'm thinking, what can I do first? And then, ask my partner how they can support me, and hopefully that need can get met.
Yeah. And if your partner can't or isn't willing to or isn't good at it, then you ask for other support or you let it go.
Yeah.
Like, who
Yeah.
cares? Right. You have to, like you said, reprioritize. Is it, in recovery programs, there's an idea of detached, like loving detachment, and not trying to help control someone's outcome. And it's even in parenting, conscious parenting. Like, you got to let your children figure stuff out. Like, they're going to fall, they're going to fail. Don't stop them from doing that. But if it's in the case of, my partner, he wouldn't make crumbs. He's hilarious because he's so neat and very tidy and clean in his office. And he'd prefer that the whole house looked like that. And I'm a slob. I am a mess. I'm not dirty. I just live in I
Mhm.
just live in chaos, and I'm okay with that. And he's not. And but I wasn't going to change, so he had to quickly like understand. I was like, well, then you can clean it up if he has a problem, whatever. If this pile bothers you, and my house otherwise is pretty neat and tidy with a couple exceptions, my office being one of them. But so on the flip side, and he'd have crumbs. Like, I get this weird anal thing about the kitchen. I got it because I cook, and I don't really clean. I've helped there, but I do clean up obviously after meals, or I do dishes, or in between when my help comes. But these crumbs, I'm like, what? You think you're so neat in every other area, and then you leave crumbs? Like, it drives me crazy. And then I had to flip the switch because I was looking at that and I thought, okay, what's that about for me? That's some weird projection of something going on with me. And I don't even need to care what that is. But I said to myself, because I love this man and I am so happy that we have finally found each other. And I'm so excited and so like I've the happiest I've ever been. And I'm gonna like worry about crumbs because you know what?
Right.
When those crumbs aren't there, he's not gonna be here. And I'll be very sad about that. So I was
Yeah.
like, so now I flipped it and now I look at the crumbs and I feel love versus frustration because I love him and he made those crumbs and it's like his little signature move. So I'm like, all right, he was here. It's like in the Peanuts, like what the little cloud guy, like he left a little smudge. It's like, okay, he was here. So now I changed it to be like, to remind myself that I love this man and who cares? it's a crumb. Like, what's going on with you, JJ? What are you really upset about that has nothing to do with these crumbs? Right. So they're two separate issues. So you could do that with little things like toothpaste. But if you have but you have to look at the different things that you're focused on that's creating this whirlwind and momentum of not feeling support. And I'd also use my law of attraction background and say, well, where do you get support? Does your husband or partner pay bills? Do they pick up the children? How do they support you? And instead of looking at how they don't, either let go of the shit, change the stuff, let them suffer their own consequences. Who cares? Let the toothpaste go bad and be hard. And then when he complains why it's hard, say, well, you don't put the cap back on. It's not my fault. Right. Like, you have to, in order for people to learn, to suffer their own consequences. So like, let it go. Let the dishes sit in the sink forever and until somebody does them. And then if someone says, well, how come there's no dishes? Well, you haven't done the dishes. Like, I always do them. It's your turn. Like, anyway, and I'm not trying to force lessons, but it's our relationship to, I think when I was growing up, my mother's like me. I mean, she's much worse, but I would look at like her sister or other people whose houses were super neat, super clean. And I was like, something's going on underneath the surface there. I was like, if your spotless life looks so perfect, it means you're covering up something on the inside, because if the outside is all controlled, you got to know there's a mess going on the inside. Okay. So it's like the opposite. Not that I'm saying that a messy person is all good on the inside too, but generally speaking, the tighter we are, the more controlling we are about how others see us. Oh, we're just covering up a whole bunch of stuff in there.
Right, right. Oh, I love that. So, I feel like that is a good wrap up to this conversation, especially with this podcast being about relationships. And that's something I've had to learn. Me and my husband have been together for 9 years. And that's something I definitely had to learn, was shifting my perspective and not wanting to be in control all the time, not wanting to be right all the time, not trying to push, you need to listen to me. You're not listening. And turning it and being more observant, listening to myself more, understanding what I really needed. And like you said, looking at how he does support me, because he's not going to be able to give in all areas, just like I'm not able to give in all areas, because that may not be my strength. And that's perfectly fine. We all have different areas that we're good at and areas that we're not so good at. And it's good to find you a partner that complements you so that you can feed off of each other. But you got to change your perspective first. Let go of some of that control, let go of the need to be right, and focus more on the good thing. And a previous interview, um, a lady had brought up a good point, that your partner may not always be your first choice, that you can have a second choice, a third choice, a fourth choice, however many choices you need, that will offer you the support that you need. So you don't have to, solely rely on this one person, that you should always have, backups until your need is finally met. And don't feel bad about it. Your partner should be understanding. And as long as that need is being met, everything is good. It's good, right? So I really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Before we, leave, I would love for you to just drop your information. How can people reach out to you? How can they, if they want to book a call or book a session with you, learn more about you, any social media that you want to put out there? Would
Yeah.
appreciate you dropping that for us.
I'm on all social media, but I really only use Instagram actively. So I'm on Instagram. It's JJ Flizanes. My website's jjflizanes.com. You can find all my podcasts there. I mean, so if you're just going to remember one thing, JJ Flizanes, Flizanes, Fli, Zanes, Zanes, 2 J's. And then we're good to go. You'll find all my podcasts. You'll find all my courses, all my stuff. Not necessarily the feelings and needs list. Like I mentioned, that's a special link that I don't advertise. It's only when I talk about it. So it's because it's a free gift. So it's jjflizanes.com/feelings list. And so if you type that in, you'll get to that page to get that. And if you don't, you can send me an email and I can respond and give you the link. And then otherwise, everything else I mentioned, the 3 reasons why talk therapy is ineffective, that course is there on my homepage. There's a couple others that are there, but yeah, jjflizanes.com is really all you need. All my social media is there. It's all there.
Right. Simple enough. Love that. Simple, easy. Just go to jjflizanes.com. You'll find everything that you need. Thank you so much. This was very insightful, very relatable. I hope everyone who is listening or watching was able to get valuable insight, valuable advice, get some tools that maybe they can take away from this interview. And if not, then you may need to book a call with her. You may need to book a session with her and get into to getting the right tools that will fit for you. And it sounds like she said, she has a big chest full of them. So you never know what you'll find that will work to get you on a path that you need to be in order to heal. So thank you so much for coming on. Everyone, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, make sure that you drop them in the comments. All of this information will be in the description, the show notes below. So make sure that you click that and read that as well. I'm going to put, all the websites, social media links, your bio and everything like that, how people can reach out to you. So make sure you read the description box and leave a comment. Make sure that you follow us on social media. And if you have any questions, like she said, you can always reach out to her via email. All right. Thank you so much. And I will talk to you soon. Bye.